Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. My channel is Discerning What is True on YouTube, and I'm going to be sharing a particular book tonight, actually a chapter within one of those books. That is the 23rd day of, sorry, not the 23rd day, the last day of December. That is the 31st day of 2023. The name of the book is called The Egyptian Miracle. It's called The Introduction to the Wisdom of the Temple. The chapter is chapter 7, which I'll be reading tonight, called Man and Measure by Rene Schwaller de Lubicz. And I appreciate those who have chimed in yesterday, I think it was, about all the about others that were interested in this particular book as they were sharing and appreciating my reading, and I appreciate that also. So let's get into the book here. Again, the Egyptian Miracle. Man and Measure. The world become from the one. Its distance from its cause in that it has dimension, movement, and content, and that it contains its own measure in itself. It could not have become without harmony or without the imminence of number, and thus numbers that clearly measure it. These measures are the direct results of all we have just seen, and we already know in what is the just measure is to be applied to one thing or another, to be resolved in the difficulty, particularly entailed in the determination of the unit of measurement. It must be in harmony with the world in such a manner that by means of it, the entire cosmos becomes measurable through a natural logic that results from the numbers themselves. Everything having become through the imagination of a one and only origin, everything is thereby tied to the same law. Man being the ultimate creature, he is in the image of the cause. Hence, he must bear in him a direct relation between its forms, which must be directly proportionate to the measure of the cosmos in its entirety. Man, know thyself, and thou shalt know the universe. Quotation. It is true that man's senses are a creation of this world, and inversely, this world is what these senses reveal to man. In other words, I think that the world expands with the expansion of the senses, and a sixth sense would open the door to the notion of a sixth number, just as the five senses reveal the closure of the temple through the fifth number. I also believe that an animal knows only a world proportionate proportionate to its senses, and dimensions are different for it than they are for us, and so is the sense of measure. Accordingly, animals can be the typical symbolic ones of the stages, that is what we call revelation, of becoming, and then above all of evolution. Sorry, hit the wrong button again. So bear with me again as I get back to the right place here. Got a little bit too ahead here, so let me get back in here. Okay, a amulet can be the typical symbol of one of the stages of revelation, of becoming, and then above all of evolution. It would probably be impossible for us to rediscover the true measures without divine illumination, were it not that certain traditions and texts help us in our orientation. Supportedly only by the revelation of numbers, it requires a specific, almost superhuman strength to dare affirm that a particular proportion is inedible, the measure of a particular magnitude, were it not that such tradition, in fact, were it not that some traditions or scientific data, however approximate, confirm this certitude. Yet this must once have happened, and our admiration should be boundless for those superhuman beings who were able to receive such a revelation, which must be coupled with the revelation of sacred science. Not many men have been given the right to assemble the fragments of such gnosis for the reconstruction of the cathedral. How much esteem do we then owe those incomparably individuals who surface so rarely through the course of time and who entirely alone have been able to see this, and how much more yet which can only be vaguely suspected? My initial elucidation was experienced while contemplating the Mysteries Triangle. Mystery Triangle of the Pentateuch. It is perfect since the number 12 surrounds the first Trinity and is constructed upon it. This becomes clear even after the briefest study of the evolution of numbers. If we count the units that comprise the size of this triangle, we attain the three creative numbers that constitute the three sides of a triangle. I know to be mysterious perfect. And I'm going to show this real quick to you. It's down here at the bottom. Let's continue. Raised to their square, the three sides give the demonstration of the right triangle of Pythagoras, since the square of the two sides are equal to the square of the hypotenuse. Thus, the image of the ternary cause within the zodiac circle gives to the theorem of Pythagoras. The latter is known to have studied in Pharaonic Egypt, where this theorem was taught by the inheritors of the undeniable knowledge of initiates. For a very long time, I was unable to extract the consequences of this discovery, when at last I learned that the ancient land surveyors were given the nicknames of arpito napti, meaning those who measure with a cord. One of the most important ceremonies of the founding of a temple is, indeed, the stretching of the cord between the two stakes. After a sighting on the circular polar stars, after having measured the time by the clepsydro, that is the water clock, in order to establish the orientation of the temple, the king and Secher, the mistress of divine books, stretched the cord on the site of his walls and determined its four angles by striking the stakes with a golden mallet. The text says, quote, Thro was there with his books. Platogny was measuring the ground in order to establish the precinct of his walls. This is from Abbas Das text, end quote. The surveyor chain was divided into cubits, and the cubits is a masterpiece as it forms a link between number, function, and measure. The Pharaonic system of measure speaks to the life whose essentially functions are directed by triads of meters. Thus, it is understandable that the cubits were often coveted with gold and preserved in the temples. In several Theban tombs, the land surveyors are represented as holding the surveyor's cord is coiled up, extremely crowned by a ram's head wearing the Uranus. This underlines the sacred character, yet the matter at hand is apparently the mere measuring of fields. And this is going to be an illustration of this also. So this is it here. Interesting that they measure in cubits. And this figure is figure 21. Surveyors, the role of the cord is crowned with a animate ram wearing the Uranus. Figure 21, I should say. A famous stela at Sehel, S-E-E-H-E-L, speaking of Krenamu, declares, quote, he is eternal there as Shu, superior to the shores, chief of the fields, who numbers the lands of Upper and Lower Egypt. It is he who rules the barley, the birds, the fish. Here is a surveyor's cord and a scribe's pallet. Here there is a support of wood and its cross of Iswat wood or his plum, which are on the shore assigned to Shu, son of Ra, as superior of the shores. Enumerated here are the cord, the scribe pallet, and the adade, or sighting device. In fact, everything necessary to establish the survey of the territory. The volatile cubits have the basic measure of Egypt engraved on one of their faces, such as the distance between the nilometers as Aswan and that of Rhoda at Cairo, as well as the length of the delta. The measuring of land presupposes knowledge of the basic laws of trigonometry, the calculations of triangles. Attributed to the ancient Egyptians is a very simple and practical means of tracing right angles on the ground in the construction of a house or temple. Take a cord, divide it into 12 parts by knots, leaving a free end of length 3. Then fix with 2 posts the length 4. There remains the second 3-part, which measures 5. Rotating sides 3 and 5 infallibly yields a right triangle. And again, I'm going to show you this example in the book. Sit here. Get it up here in the right place. Let's see. Whoops. Thus, the sacred triangle gives the general law that applies to all right triangles called diophalthine, meaning that all 3 sides can be measured in whole numbers. Other such triangles can be determined mathematically. This does not apply to the present case, but it is curious to see once more the propensity towards reasoning, which had led men astray from the true pursuit. For contained in this Pentateuch triangle is the entire secret of all measure. In order to understand this, further illumination of a seemingly strange nature must be shed. These 3 numbers, 3, 4, 5, form the zodiac circle, a fundamental cycle formed of 3 times 4. Moreover, as any rectangle is formed of 2 triangles, so the sacred triangle, if doubled, yields a rectangle whose surface is 3 times 4, or 12, and whose perimeters comprise 14 units. Thus 2 units must be interpolated between 3 and 4 and 5 in order to attain the perimeter of the rectangle, namely 3 plus 1 plus 4 plus 1 plus 5 equals 14. This brings to the mind of 3.1416, the value of pi. Unless its consequences are examined, this may seem to be a specious argument. Yet after having delved deeply into the mentality of the ancient Egyptians, I believe this was indeed one of their modes of thought. When bearing synthetic significance, the circle is a fictation of becoming, is a movement, and is also undefined in its form. It grows and shrinks ceaselessly in light. There is no curved line in the universe that would form an absolute circle. There are only cycles. The only absolute circle employed by the Egyptians, and only symbolically at that, was the opening of the pupil of the eye. All circles traced to represent the sun are slightly elliptical, and when the sun is carved in sunk relief, it is given the rounded form, figuring a segment of a spear or a breast, often with a nipple in the center. The sun is then considered as the nourisher of our universe. The circle is elastic, and is growth and is spiral, for it cannot breathe without spiral development, and everything that lives breathes. This anticipates the function of the golden section, I should say. Breath is the secret of life, and the world is spherical because it becomes through number, and the numbers are 3, 4, and 5, starting from the original Trinity. Beyond all cynical realms, we have spoken of absolute unity as the essence of perfect forms, the circle, which we have now brought into our grasp. Thus, we have assisted at the occult and non-mathematical birth of number, which is the key, or more precisely, the door. There's a piece here also. Speaking of a door, this is a painting. This is figure 23. It's located on the north wall of the tomb. The figure is running from east to west, hence towards Amentet, the sunset, the world of the beyond. If the width of the doorway is taken as unit or diameters, the height of the same opening is equal to pi. Pelvis. So I'll put this up here for you. So we continue here. Such as is defeated by two pillars joined on top by a third beam, the lintel. The image also evokes the dolmen. The hieroglyphic symbol for door is red Shah, S-H-A, which also means star and teachings and teaching. And here indeed is one of the great clues in the teaching offered by Pharaonic architecture. The door presents the fundamental laws of the functions to be developed inside the temple or sanctuary, which that very door opens. Our language is too poor to render the exact sense of the terms used by the hieroglyphic writings to designate door. One of these terms should here draw our attention. The word is transliterate as RWTY, which is allowed two distinct meanings in classical translation. RWTY can be understood as door, entrance, or perpetual. By coincidence, the Pharaonic symbol for door strikingly evokes the great letter of pi, Pi, which actually serves to designate the relation of the diameter to the circle, formerly called parapheritic. The function of pi is the irrational number par excellence, as it cannot be geometrically demonstrated, and the numerals serving to express it tends towards infinity. Here in the Thelmet tomb, we have a man running towards the world of the blessed, the infinite world, and as expected, and as an opening, this door has precisely the proportions of 1 to 3.1416, or 1 to pi. Pi and growth. If it encounters conditions favorable to its growth, a seed cast into earth will produce the fruit of its species. This seed is determined in finite magnitude that, strictly speaking, constitutes its species. Within the earth, it encounters a nucleus ganalis purification, a state that is liquid, thick, and without any solid consistency. From the moment on, it absorbs a nourishment destined to become fixed in its nature through a action negative in character. This could in fact be called a stipple action of the seed. The stipicity is actually the measure of a specific nature, its own number. The assimilated nourishment remains undetermined, so that one and the same nourishment serves an infinite of seeds whose natures or species are very different. Differentially, by the seed's own number, the product nevertheless has a character belonging as well to all other species that are growing up to a certain limit, slightly variable but determined in principle for each species, revealing itself in any genesis whatsoever. This growth is a cycle always renewed. The species, the stipic seed own number, or whatever in its plays that role, which elsewhere is called sulfur or paternal character, is the fixed element of that growth or vegetation. Being generally suitable for nourishment, any seed, whatever is assimilated in the cycle growth, is infinite in nature. It contains all possibilities within itself, which are then selected by the nature of the seed. The seed retains what suits it, forming it to its form and rejecting the unsuitable. The result or end of any veggie cycle, that is, by which are meant all the cycles immanent in the whole of a vegetable process, is always a finite form that may be a part of the whole. In general, the complete development of vegetable growth can be divided either into 5 or into 7 and 9 phases. This principle is universal and produces varieties only through selection of the seed species. It can be translated into number, and into the name diameter can be given to the seed of its species. The value of the coefficient pi can be attributed to the underdetermined or universal nutrient substance. Look at it in this way. The value of pi plays the part of the infinite element that always yields a cycle of growth in connection with a finite number. Transform into philosophy and then into the philosophy of Genesis, this spells the following. A primordial unity taken as diameter splits in two and develops quantitatively or arithmetically, becoming one. That is 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, etc. This constitutes the paternal seed of each stage or species in the world. As form, such a growth can take place only according to the vegetative cycle. Necessarily, then we always encounter a vegetative growth of spiral form, be it in a nebula, in a plant, or in a human feces. This is so because from an incomprehensible unity or prime activity of the absolute origin as well as of the active origins of a specific species seed to its own numerical determination, there exists a arithmetic variation of 1 to x. The study of numbers is connected only with the variation or the becoming of the diameter, with number as seed of its species. Shown here is the occult sense of the value of pi, through which number becomes form. Number, like a seed, determines the substantial but formless nourishment. It is in the guise of pi that it comes to give matter to form, and this form can result only from growth. Growth, therefore, is never a arithmetic addition, one quantity added to another, which is the character of the diameter, but a development into form of a substance that in itself is formless. Hence, no phase or growth is identical to the one in it succeeds. Here's a footnote real quick here. In pharaonic architecture and representations, the ark
ARC of the circle is found only when cycles renewed or growth are indicated. Cycles linked to the Osirian principle, which indeed presides over germination, and when reference to is made to all that dies and reborn on earth. Because one conditions the other just as one spirals down, develops upon another. The product of each phase can then formally superimpose itself upon the other, as do the animal rings and the tree trunk. Yet that represents but the esoteric, I should say, aspect of the form object. In fact, a path has been traveled in the example as at hand. There is a long stage between the marrow of that tree and the bark, coexisting, motivating each other. And that is the meaning of veggie growth, in secret residing in the living relationship between diameter and pi, a relation in which pi is the infinite and ultra value, the key to the possibilities of a formal becoming. Next section is called Principle of the Royal Cubit. The sun, Atom Ra, makes the earth. The earth produces man, and man adapts to the region. The concatenation of cause to effect implies a functional interdependence that translates into quality and quantity. Each phase of becoming is, by its form, linked to the first cause in some way or other. The earthworm is son of the sun and bears the heritage inversely of characteristic from the paternal solar cause. Today, man thinks and can only think as son and heir of his own heaven. He must search in himself for the elements of the science, be it in the knowledge of the becoming of things or at the objective world that he acknowledges. Hermes said, quote, the work is with thee, end quote. And Pharaonic Egypt, when speaking of measure, says, quote, man measures the world, end quote. And the entrance to the right of the principal corridor of the tomb of Ramses the Ninth in Thebes Valley of the Kings, the cycle of the Dwa, concludes with a curious figure of a royal mummy whose raised arm reaches beyond the head by the length of 1 cubit. So I'm going to show you this here. A couple pictures here. This is it here. The top here, speaking of. And then also, he's talking about the ones that are leaning against at an angle. So in figure 25 on the left, this is the one at the bottom, layout of principle, the king as the hypotenuse of the sacred triangle. On the right, the king has a value of pi and 1.2 pi to second, equaling pi. In reality, the height of a man is only 4 cubits. This mummy is placed diagonally in the position of a hypotenuse to a right triangle whose base and cathes are figured by a serpent. This representation traces a principle and then a geometric figure. There can be no doubt that the triangle represented is the sacred triangle 3, 4, 5, and the length of the arms cubit has the value 1. We know furthermore that the total height of a man is divided by the navel into 2 lengths, which are as 1 to pi and as 1 to pi equals pi to 2, pi over 2 over pi. It follows that man's height is equal to that. The figure of Ramses the Ninth represents the king's attains the value 5 as diagonal, as hypotenuse of the sacred triangle. Thus it is that this figure reveals a function that measures the cycle, namely the height of the king, where 5 plus 1 cubit, or theoretically plus 1/5 his height, which in conjunction with the golden section gives the numbers. This is the value of the coefficient pi, and plus it is the fifth part, so it'll be 2.618 over 5. It'll be times 6 equals 3.1416. This is the value of the coefficient of pi, equal to this, for a diameter of 10 being 31.416. Thus 12 royal men measure the cycle of heaven. The function resides in the original impulse of becoming, and the golden mean yields functionally the only real value for the cyclical coefficient, being itself a cyclical number. Our rational calculation of pi, based on the average of inscribed and circumscribed polygons, attempt to define a curve by straight lines and lend to infinite absurdity. To conclude this brief outline concerning the cyclical function of pi, we will cite another example. On the east and west walls of the colonnade of Ammon in the temple of the Zohar, the great feast of Apel, A-P-L, is depicted. During those annual feasts or festivals, the barks of the Thelman triad, the Amant, Mut, and Consor, solemnly left the temple of Karnak, the seats of Apet, I guess it is a T, I'm sorry, in order to go to Zohar, apex of the south. That is, on the west wall, the procession progresses southward, proceeding by the revealing population or the reveling population by standard bearers, male and female musicians and dancers, while the priests then robes swelling into the wind accompany the three sacred barks as they descend on the east wall. These two walls thus twice defeat the factor of the third pylon at the great temple of Ammon in Karnak, such as the monument was at the time of Amenemhotep III. The drawing on the pylon executed on the walls of the let me get down here. Temple of Zohar confirms on all points what has been said during the course of this chapter. So I'm going to show you a couple things here. So here we go with this piece here. And then this one over here. The drawing of this pylon executed on the walls of the, yes, I already done that, sorry. So figure 26 is beating the king's bark. Priests, that is priests with windswept robes, leave the third pylon of the great temple of Karnak. That's the part here, the flags on the top, I would call them. And you'll see just there are two with a centerpiece of being, I would say, the door piece, so to speak. And then you see the bearing the king's bark, priests with windswept robes. So this is what they're doing. Lead the third pylon of the great temple at Karnak, which I said earlier. Then in figure 27 is the opening of the doors equals 1. The height with the pylon equals 1.2, or pi, that is 0.6. That is 5 plus 3 equals 0.6 times 5.236 equals 3.1416. If the width of the door equals 1, the total height equals 2. The height of this doorway has a very precise value of pi in relation to its width taken as a unity. Furthermore, the width of the jambs, J-A-M-A-S, of this door, that's Shah, is an application of the function shown by the figure of Ramses IX described above. This affords a geometric definition of the irrational length of pi by means of straight edge and compass alone. The squaring of the circle is insoluble problem if the irrational number pi intervenes. It finds its solution only through the function of the golden mean. And that is the conclusion of chapter 7 tonight. Again, this is a chapter I've been reading, what I would call Man and Measure. So I appreciate you all being here. It is, I'm learning things here. It's a very good book, very deep, has quite a few illustrations also, what is going on. It's obvious that Rene put a great deal of work putting all this together in his this book. So thank you for being here. I appreciate your attendance, and I wish you a good night, and you take care.